Bava Kamma Daf Kuf Amud Aleph, beyond the letter of the law, לפנים משורת הדין. We actually started at the bottom of Tzadi Tet, Amud Bet, and we go into Kuf Amud Aleph. And today we're looking at the fact that we all know that there's such a thing as the spirit of the law, of going beyond the letter of the law of halakha, of understanding the intention of the law and going beyond that. That's the whole idea of Midat Chasidut, as the Mesilat Yeshorim explains it in Perek Yud Chet and Perek Yud Tet of the Mesilat Yeshorim. What it is to be Midat Chasidut, to understand the intention of the Torah, to understand the intention of Hashem, and to be able to go beyond the letter of the law and actually fulfill the intention of the Torah as well. But what are the guidelines? Where does this apply? Particularly in the areas of Ben Adam Lechavero, when we're dealing with matters between people, you're dealing with arguments, you're dealing with court cases, with claims and counterclaims. How far do you have to go in going lifnim mשורת הדין, saying, yes, it's true, legally this is my right, but am I required to forgo my right sometimes and to go beyond that? Those are the principles that we're looking at here. And it's based on two psukim. The one is in last week's Parsha, in Parshas Yitro, where Yitro says to Moshe, V'hizharta ethem et hachukim ve'et hatorot, you'll teach the Jewish people the laws and the principles of the Torah. V'hodata lahem et haderech yelchu ba, and you'll teach them the way they're meant to go. Ve'et hamaseh asher yasun, and the things that they're meant to be doing. That's the one posuk. And the other posuk is from Mishlei, from the book of Proverbs, Man telech b'derech tovim, in order that you go in the way of those who are good, virtuous people, v'orchot tzadikim tishmor, and observe the ways, the pathways of righteous people, of tzadikim. Says our Gemara, Itmar, we have a case. Hamar'eh dinar l'shulchani v'nimtza ra. This is a case of professional advice. So they grant that in your field, you give professional advice, people follow it, and it turns out bad. It doesn't work for them. How responsible are you? And we're not talking again about legal responsibilities, we're talking about moral responsibilities. Any trusted advisor gives advice to an individual, to a family, or to a business, and it can happen. You, with the best of intentions, you give good advice, it turns out it doesn't turn out well for your client. So this was the case here. Tani chada uman patur hedyot chayav. One brisa says, if you are a highly qualified professional and you made a mistake, you're patur. This can happen. You've done the best you can. You don't have to pay. You don't have to compensate. But hedyot. But if you are not qualified and you gave professional advice, you're responsible for the outcome. V'tanya idach, we have another brisa. It says, Beinuman ben hedyot chayav. Another one says a trusted advisor is obligated to compensate for the damage he causes with bad advice, whether or not he's highly qualified. Amar Rav Papa explains that, Ki tanya uman patur kegon danku v'isur. When we say that if you're qualified, you don't have to compensate, that's super qualified. Like Danko and Isur, who were very well trained in being able to detect forgeries of coins. They don't need any more studying. They've learned, they've practiced, they know everything there is to know on the topic. Such a professional who gives advice is potter. He's done, what more can you do? He's done the best he can. So what mistake did the Danko and Isur do? There was a particular unusual circumstance of new coinage had come out that they couldn't have known about, and that's where they made a mistake. Here we have a case study. Rabbi Chia was a banker. Rabbi Chia knew banknotes and he knew forgeries and he knew coins. And this woman comes to Rabbi Chia and shows him a coin. And he says to her, this is good, this is kosher, this is not forged. I went out into the marketplace. She comes the next day back to Rabbi Chia, and she said, you gave me advice yesterday, and I engaged in commerce with that coinage that you told me was okay, and the coin was rejected. And now the people I bought from have gone. I can't get the money back. I've lost it. V'lo kanafikli, it didn't work for me. Omar le Rav, Rabbi Chia said to Rav, who worked for him, Zil chalfeni, go and give her a new coin. Uchtov apinkasi din esek bish, and in my records, just write, this was a bad deal, I made a mistake. These things happen, just write it off as an unfortunate experience. Umayshna danku v'as isu, so why are danku and isu are free from paying? And mishum delot tzrichin lemigma, there's nothing more they could learn. They were experts. Rabbi Chia nami lav lemigma kober. Rabbi Chia was also a well-known expert in the topic. Why did he have to pay? Rabbi Chia answers the Gemara, Lifnim Mishurat Hadin Hu Da'avid. You're right. Since he was fully qualified, and he couldn't have known what happened was an unusual situation, and he couldn't really have known about that unusual situation. Since that was the case, he doesn't have to pay. But Lifnim Mishurat Hadin, he went beyond that which was required of him, and he compensated the woman. Kidetani Rav Yosef, as Rav Yosef learned, V'hodat alahem, when Yitro told Moshe, V'hodat alahem, ze beit chayim, that means teach them Torah. Et haderech zu gemilut chasadim, derech means teach them about the laws of chesed. Yelchu ze bikur cholim, and Yelchu's talking about visiting the sick. And Ba zu kfura, and then Ba means burying the dead. And Rashi talks about why you've got to add bikur cholim and kfura if you've already got chesed, isn't it covered? Et hamaaseh ze adin, and teach them the laws. Asher yasun. The Maaseh is what you have to do according to halacha. But Asher yasun is what you ought to do. Teach them also what you ought to do, not just what you're obligated to do in terms of halacha. Zu lifnei mishurat hadin. That's our Gemara. We have a parallel Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf Lamed, in a case where Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi helps a person unload and load his baggage. And the Gemara says, but a Talmud Chacham doesn't have to do that, although there's a din that if somebody's struggling or somebody's donkey is struggling with baggage, you've got to help them unload and load. But if you're a person of stature, that's just not right, that people should see you loading and unloading baggage, then you don't have to do it. You're potter. There was a time when we used to come to the airport or to a railway station or to a ship, a porter would come to your car and take your luggage. That's now you see choshev of people schlepping in the airport, schlepping suitcases, acting like porters. It's not the fichwede. It's not just Talmid Chochem. You see millionaires also doing that. Schlepping suitcases. It's not what one should be doing. If one has statue, you get somebody else to do that. Pay somebody else to do that. You shouldn't be schlepping. And Rabbi Yishmael shouldn't have been schlepping. Answers the Gemara, he did Lifnei Mishurat Hadin, and the Gemara brings the same limud, the same learning that we have from the din of Yisro. But then we have a third piece of Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf Pei Gimel, Amud Aleph, where we have a case of Rabbi Bar Chanan. The question was Rabbi Bar Chanan or Rabbi Bar Avuna, where the porters, he got porters to carry his wine, and they broke them. They destroyed a fortune of wine. So he took their coats as security until they could pay for the damage they caused. They came to court, they came to Rav, and Rav said, give them back their coats. You can't take their coats. So Rabbi Bar Chanan says to Rav, Dina Hachi, is that the halacha? Is that the law? Amrele, yes, that's the law. Leman telech b'derech tovim. It's not the law in Choshen Mishpat. It's the law stated by Shlomo HaMelech, by King Solomon in the book of Proverbs, Leman telech b'derech tovim. That's a good thing to do. And from you, we expect you to go more than the law. And so he gave them back the coats. These porters came back to Rav and they said, you know what, thanks for giving us back our coats. Sorry we messed up your wine. We're very poor and we actually don't have any money. And they want money from him. Says Rav to Rabbi Bar Chanan, Zil hav igrayu. Now pay them their money as well. They didn't deliver. And again, these are kablanim, like as we discussed. These are contractors. They were supposed to collect the barrels of wine and deliver the barrels of wine. They didn't. They broke them on the way. Nevertheless, says Rav, pay them as well. Give them back their coats that you took and pay them for their work. Stina hachi, is that the din? Amalein v'orchat tzadikim tishmor. Yes, the second part of the same pasuk. V'orchat tzadikim tishmor. Preserve the way of tzadikim. Be sure to go beyond the letter of the law and do what you need to do. Says Rashi, b'derech tovim lifnei mishurat hadin. This is talking about a case of lifnei mishurat hadin, going beyond the letter of the law. So we have our case in Bava Kamma, we have a case in Bava Metzia. Both of them learned from Yitro. Both of them learned from et ha'maaseh asher ya'asun. And we have a case in Bava Metzia with the wine and the porters and Rabbi Bar Chanan, and there it's a different pasuk we bring from Mishlei. Asks Tosfos in Bava Metzia Daf Chaf Daled, and in our Tosfos here on Daf Kuf. The reason I bring the Bava Metzia and Daf Chaf Daled is because it's articulated far better. Sometimes Tosfos isn't written that well, and that's because, for example, the Tosfos on Bava Kamma is not written by one person. It was put together by the talmidim, and there different people have written it, and it's a bit messy. Tosfos of Bava Metzia was edited by Rabbi Eliezer Mituch. Rabbi Lapin was one of the late Baalei Tosfos of the 13th century and a master editor. And he collected the Tosfos in Bava Metzia, and he put them together and he wrote them, and they read beautifully. We're going to soon get to Bava Metzia, you'll see the difference. And this very Tosfos, it says the same, it goes through the same reasoning. In the school of Tosfos, this is the question they asked, and this is how they answered it, but it's explained more, it's articulated more clearly in Bava Metzia. That it's the same thing here. And Tosfos says, so why is it that the first two sugyas bring the posuk from the Torah, and the third one brings from Tanakh? Why bring a posuk from Tanakh if you can bring one from the Torah itself? Why not bring the posuk from the Torah? Asks Tosfos, a very powerful Tosfos. Answers Tosfos, Bishum lifni mishras hadim ein lo lahafsid. There was loss in the third case. The first two cases it's about going beyond the letter of the law. But in the third case, it's actually accepting loss. That you don't have to do lifni mishras hadim. That's not required. Lekach maiti kra leman telech b'derech tovim. That's why it brings the posuk of leman telech b'derech tovim. There's a major chidush in this Tosfos. Can you see what it is? What's the chidush in the Tosfos? So Tosfos says, why don't we bring the posuk from the Torah, from the posuk from Yisro, in Pei Gimel as well, in Bava Metzia Pei Gimel? He says, because Bava Metzia Pei Gimel, there's loss. And in loss, what does Tosfos actually say? The words of Tosfos, Mishum lifni mishras hadin, ein lo lahafsid. You don't have to go lifni mishras hadin if it entails loss. You go lifni mishras hadin if it means doing something extra, but not if it entails loss. So the chidush in Tosfos is lifni mishras hadin has a limit. You don't have to do lifni mishras hadin when there's loss. So what's the posuk then that the Gemara brings? The Rav says to Rabbi Baba Hanan, what does he say to him? You've got to do it. Give them back their coats and pay them their wages. And Rashi says that's lifni mishras hadin. Says Tosfos, no, it's not. Tosfos disagrees with Rashi. This is not lifni mishras hadin. This is something else. This is midas chasidus. There's such a thing as midat chasidut, as we said towards the end of the Mitzvah Shishorim, of understanding the intention of the Torah and going beyond the letter of the law. But this is not lifnei mishras hadin. So according to Tosfos, okay, all very well. But what's the difference? Why are there two different psukim? So Tosfos says, go back and look at the psukim at the top. The pasuk that Yitro says in our parsha last week, V'hodat alem et haderech yilchu bam et ha'maseh asher yasu, that's lifnei mishras hadin. This, which Shlomo HaMelech says, Laman telech b'derech tovim v'orchot tzadikim tishmor, that's not lifnei mishras hadin, that's something else. What else? What's the difference? Why? Who cares if it's lifnei mishras hadin or it's not? If it's learned from the top posuk or it's learned from the second posuk, what difference does it make? But when you get a situation like this, you've got to say, how do you make sense of this? How do you learn this Tosfos? Rashi says it's all lifnei mishras hadin. Ask Tosfos, if it's all lifnei mishras hadin, learn it from the posuk in Yisro. Says Tosfos, no, it's not all lifnei mishras hadin. There are two separate things going on here. What's the difference between them? Look at the wording of the psukim carefully. What does Yitro say to Moshe? V'hodata lahem et haderech yelchu ba v'et ha'maseh asher yasun. Who is the object of the sentence? V'hodata lahem. To who? Am Yisrael, every Jewish person. What does Shlomo HaMelech say? Leman telech b'derech tovim v'orchot tzadikim tishmor. Who's it talking to? Tzaddik. Only tzaddikim. So that means that according to Tosfos, the din of going lifnei mishras hadin is not just for tzaddikim and chasidim. It's for everybody. And we learn that from Yitro. The din of leman telech b'derech tovim, where a loss is entailed, that's not for everybody. You've got to be a tzaddik. For somebody to damage you and you still go and compensate them, you pay them. For that you've got to be a tzaddik. The Torah doesn't expect that of the ordinary person. The Torah expects you to go out of your way when it doesn't entail loss. But when it entails loss, it doesn't expect that. But if you're a tzaddik, it does expect that. And we see that actually in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Yud Beis in Choshen Mishpat, you can't force people to go lifnei mishras hadin. Says the Ramah, ve'en beit din yicholim lakuf likanes lifnei mishras hadin. You can't force people to go. If a person wants to do more than required, if a person wants to go by the spirit of the law, that's their decision. Even if it's clear that that would be the right thing to do, you can't force somebody to do the right thing if the halakha doesn't require it of him. Ve'yesh cholkim, says the Ramah. But the Mordechai and others disagree and says the Urim, what that means, the Urim v'tumim, shenireh dehach kfi hainu bidvorim. You can't punish him if he doesn't do lifnim mishuras hadin, if he doesn't go beyond the letter of the law. But you persuade him. The Beis Din, the court of law, should try and persuade this person to do more than the minimum requirements. Says the Pischei Tshuva, another sefer, we learned the Darchei Tshuva yesterday. This is the Pischei Tshuva. Also critically important, the Pischei Tshuva says that in this situation, Kein noagin b'chol Beis Din b'Yisrael lakuf la'ashir b'davar ra'ui v'nachon v'af al pi she'ein adin kach. If a person has the money, even though the din, you paskin the din. Wealthy man is having a court case against poor man. The din is the wealthy man is right. So the Beis Din has to paskin it. The wealthy man is right, the poor man is wrong. However, the Beis Din should say, but wealthy man, will it hurt you to pay up? So pay, compensate the person. Go beyond it. You don't have to just stand by your rights. So we see in Shulchan Aruch that when it's lifnim mishuras hadin, Beis Din puts pressure on you. But if it's not lifnim mishuras hadin, it's just a midas chasidus, as in Bava Metzia Pei Gimel, their Beis Din wouldn't put pressure on you. That's completely voluntary. If you feel you're a tzaddik and you're a derech, you want to go b'derech tovim, that's your decision. So there are three stages. There's what you're entitled to by rights. There's going according to the spirit of the law beyond that, which we all have to do. It's a requirement. It's not voluntary. The din requires of us to go beyond the spirit of the letter of the law, and Beis Din will try and influence us to do that. And then there's a case of going beyond the spirit, the letter of the law, even if it entails loss. That's not required, but it's the right thing to do. It's derech tovim. If you can, that's the right thing to do. And this is something all of us should start practicing, like everything we learn in the Matmonim. I always suggest start practicing it today. Everything we learn in the Matmonim, try putting it into practice today, not tomorrow, not next week. Try doing it today. Where can you do it? When you're driving in the traffic, you can do it. Somebody's trying to cut in front of you. It's get in front of me. It's my right of way. Yes, it's your right of way. But there's a lifnim mishuras hadin, so what? You let the person in. Just look for opportunities to let somebody get the better of you, even though it's your right. To do it just because it's derech tovim. It feels so human when you do. It feels so human. To just be able to stand back a little bit and say, what's the big deal? So you let the person, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Somebody cuts you in the line at the supermarket. It's okay. Let it be. And to express our humanness to that, both in terms of fulfilling the laws of Parshas Yitro, et ha'maseh asher ya'asun, that there are times when we have to go beyond the spirit of the law. Not in Ben Adam L'Mokum, that's midas chasidus. In matters of religiosity, that's different, that's voluntary. But where it comes to Ben Adam L'Chavero, to interpersonal, we are obligated to go beyond the letter of the law and to forego our rights. But even in situations, sometimes b'derech tovim, even if it entails a little bit of loss, if you can manage the loss, so what? Allow yourself the luxury to respond and to react as a human being who is made in the image of Hashem, not as an animal that is defending its rights at all time, but to be acting b'tselem Elokim.